Hello YouTube and welcome to another video. So in this one I'll be showing you how to set up your own intranet Wake on LAN web page that's running on your own little web server that will show you how to set up. What it does is you can connect to it through your phone, your laptop, your desktop, whatever, and from a drop-down menu select which PC of yours you want to power on, you hit a button and it can power on remotely. So there's a few prerequisites to this. You're going to need to have a basic understanding of computer networking. Like you need to know what an IP address is and stuff like that. Web servers and HTML and PHP. I'm going to give you some code you're going to have to edit just a little bit. You don't need to be an expert by any means. You just need to be able to make a little bit of sense of all that stuff. And you're going to need a running Raspberry Pi or something very similar and have it be all set up and ready to go. You don't need to use a Raspberry Pi specifically, but you can use something similar, but you're going to have to kind of use your own judgment as to what you're going to have to do differently to make it work. It should be a pretty straightforward process if you use a Debian-based distro that isn't a Raspberry Pi specifically, but I'm not going to cover that. So first off, you need your Raspberry Pi. And there's two parts to this here. There's a web server part that is, we're going to be using Apache pretty much, that actually, serves up web pages on your Pi you're going to set up. And the second part is the code itself, which is like a PHP file and some CSS formatting. So firstly, you need your Raspberry Pi. I have one set up and ready to go here. Again, I can't show you guys how to get this set up and everything. It's not really within the scope of this video to do that. But you're going to have to make a decision as to what the networking is going to look like. I have a static IP address set, which means that this address will never change. So I go into my web browser and type in that address, and I can connect to the Wake on LAN site. If you have it on DHCP, the address might change on you, so this won't be reliable. You can just use the hostname instead, but it's a trade-off. If you use DHCP, you should be able to use the hostname, but not the IP. If you use a static IP like me, you should be able to use the IP but not the hostname. If you want to get fancy, you can edit your DNS settings on what is most likely your home router to set it so that your computer asks the router where is Raspberry Pi, and it points you to the static IP. But that's up to you, and I can't cover all of that in this video. You just need to decide if you're going to set up a static IP or just leave it dynamic, and if you're going to want to connect through hostname or IP address or whatever. So the next thing you need to do is actually take these couple files here and move them over. I'll explain all of this later, but what we have is a stylesheet.css file, which is just the styling. You don't need to edit this whatsoever, unless you want to make the background of the site something other than white or something like that, but there's no necessity of editing that. And then we have wakelan.php. I'm not going to go over all the specifics of this now. We'll go into it later, but first what needs to happen is we need to copy it over to your web server and basically get the web server installed, really. So this part of the process is pretty straightforward. We're going to move the file over. So there's a nice little utility called PSCP. You don't need to use this. You can use FTP or whatever else you want, but you have to set that up. PSCP is really helpful. So if you have PuTTY on your computer, assuming you're using Windows machine, you go to Open File Location, and you should have PSCP in the same directory as PuTTY. If you don't, you should just go to PuTTY's download site and download pscp.exe, and usually just plop that in the same directory as PuTTY. It just makes it easy to remember. So we're going to copy that directory into a command prompt. So change directory like that. And we can see, oops, he's using Linux. We should be able to see pscp.exe. And again, this is just a little program that will help you move your files over from wherever you've downloaded them to wherever you want them to be. And again, there's multiple ways of doing this. You can use FTP or whatever. You can use wget. If I end up giving out a link that has these files available through HTTP, but pretty much just download these two files to your machine wherever I have linked them and do this process. So the first thing you need to do is you need to type in pscp.exe. Then you need to type in the location of the file you want to move. So for me, it's c:/users/scott/desktop wake LAN for video, and then the file you want to copy over. I think you can only copy one at a time, so I'm going to start with wakelan.php, and then you type in where you're going to copy it to. It starts with the username of the machine you're copying it to, which in this case is Pi, so Pi, then an @, then its address. And again, if you're using DHCP, you might want to use the host name instead of the IP right here, but whatever. And a colon / location you want to put it in. So I'm going to put in home/pi. I should ask you for your password, and there it is. So if I go to home/pi, there it is. So I'm going to run that again, except this time I'm going to copy over stylesheet.css. Asks me for my password again, and it should show up right there. Perfect. So the file is on there, but of course we can't access it from the web browser yet because we haven't installed Apache or anything. So the next part of the process is installing Apache. So actually there's another requirement we need, which is wakelan. So you should do a sudo apt-get install wakelan, or I believe it's wake on LAN. Yeah, it's wake on LAN. It might ask you, do you want to install this, yes or no? And you, of course, just say yes. It's also very good to do a sudo apt-get update before you do this, just to make sure your machine is updated, so that you can grab all these things the way you're supposed to. So after we install that, we're going to install Apache and PHP. This is kind of like a LAMP stack, except you don't need MySQL, so we're not going to install that. So to install Apache, and I'll probably paste my super secret little document of commands in the YouTube video so that you can just kind of copy and paste stuff as you need. Or at least upload a how-to.txt file that will tell you all the steps that I use in this video to configure things. You can kind of work through that alongside the video. Okay, once that's done, you need to install all these different packages. You might actually not need all of these, but this is just what I'm using and it works perfectly fine, so I recommend just doing that. Okay, so that's all done. And by the way, I do recommend leaving this window open here where you move the files over. We're probably going to end up doing it again. And yeah, so the next step is to move the files that you put on your Linux machine to the proper location. And before we do that, though, we're going to check to make sure that we actually have Apache installed properly. So I'm going to go back to that IP. And just type in the IP, and it'll go to the default page. And all those pages are stored under /var/www/html. Except it's owned by root probably, so you're going to need to do, let's see, okay, I'm in there. It's probably a good idea just to elevate into root, just so you can edit all this stuff with root permissions. If you type in ls, we have index.html. Now if you know anything about web servers, you should know that index.html or PHP or what have you is the default page that is loaded up. So when we connect to the IP of this box, right, which is 149 in my configuration, you don't need to type in /index.html. You can if you want, like watch, index.html. It goes to the same place. It's that if you don't specify document, it assumes that it's going towards index. You can change that setting if you want, but the easiest thing to do is just to name the file index. But we don't want that. It's going to get annoying. It's going to be in the way. It's a good way to test your web server initially, but we're just going to remove it because we really don't need it. So if I refresh, there's nothing. It gives me a directory browser, which probably isn't super secure. You can disable that if you really want, but yeah. So you need to move the files over, and if you recall, we put them under my home folder. So I'm going to move them in. So if I go ls/home/pi, they're both in there properly again. So I'm going to copy them over. So I'm going to go to, how about CP at this time? I'll go CP /home/pi /wakelan.php. We're going to copy it into a current directory, which is var www.html. I'm going to, of course, call it wakelan.php. I'm going to do the same thing again, just with stylesheet.css. Okay, so now if we go here, it's not going to find anything. I mean, it tells me that these things are in the directory, but this isn't named index.html. You can name it index.html if you want, or you can type in your IP or hostname / wakeland.php. Oops. And that's what it's going to look like. Just for simplicity's purposes, I'm going to rename it to index.php, so I have to type in wakelan. So I'm going to rename it. So essentially you're moving it. So I'm going to move wakelan into index.php. So that, oops, it just goes straight to index.php. You don't have to specify it, which makes it a little bit easier. You have to type less. So this is what the page looks like, and you're going to have a drop-down menu here with all the PCs that you manually add, and you're going to have a hard-coded password. So if you select the PC and enter the right password, hit submit, it'll tell you a message saying that it powered the machine on, and ideally the machine will power on. There's a few configurations you need to make to this file. You could just go ahead and use Nano or something and edit the file straight on your machine when you just copy it over, but that's really icky. I think what we're going to do is use Notepad++, whatever editor you want, on your workstation, and then once we're done editing it, just copy it over and overwrite what we currently put in here. The reason I had you copy it over in the first place is just so I can kind of show you something in here and point to something that it pertains to, rather than explaining how to edit the entire file without having you see the actual page that we're working on. So the first thing you need to do is edit the password to your liking. You can remove it altogether, but to change it, you just go right up here at the top. It's made this nice little thing up here. Just go ahead and edit it to whatever you want it to be. I'm going to call it, let's say, I don't know, name of my dog. No, I don't know. I'll just leave it password for now. So the password is password. So you type in password, type submit. It doesn't do anything because you didn't select a computer, but that would be the password you have to enter. If you want to remove the password functionality altogether, you don't necessarily have to delete this, but you have to go down in here and remove this if password equals PW conditional. You just basically remove this line, and this line, so that it doesn't assess the password because you wouldn't be entering a password. So you can just ignore that box. You could also edit it if you really wanted to remove the box completely, where you have to edit the HTML a little bit, but I'm not going to tell you how to do that because I don't feel like spending time figuring it out myself and explaining it. So just assuming that you're going to use a password, just change that to be whatever you want it to be. And something else that's important to consider is that by default, your web server is not using HTTPS, so this is not encrypted. So when you send a password over, you can, if somebody was sniffing your traffic, they could actually see what the password you entered was. So if you're going to use a password, please don't reuse passwords from other places. Make it something unique, so that if somebody's sniffing your traffic somehow, they're not going to pick up on what it is. And secondly, you can enable HTTPS on your server if you want to, but I'm not going to do that because it's just a lot of work. This is why you should not make this site internet accessible. You could port forward this to the internet so you can access this little page from, halfway across the world if you want to do, but I do not recommend doing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this by VPNing into my network, then connecting to the website or the internet site locally. Which is way secure. It'll go over a secure tunnel via VPN, which will be nice. So moving on, what you next need to do is you need to enter the actual selections you want, and that is done right here. I added a little comment in here that tells you how to do it. So the format is, you just basically copy and paste this. This is HTML. You enter the MAC address you want here and the description you want here. And you need to use colons, not dashes, in the MAC address. So here's a little kind of placeholder. It says none, and it doesn't have any value. So if I would type submit, it doesn't actually do anything. It's just there because every time you reload the page, this drop-down defaults to the first value, which should be none. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm just going to copy this and paste it. So the first thing we need, obviously, is the MAC address of the first machine I want to add. So I'm going to grab the MAC address of my desktop here. So I'm going to type in ipconfig/all, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my MAC address to my Ethernet adapter, which is this. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it right into here. We have to remove those dashes. Like I said earlier, you have to use colons instead. At least to my knowledge, you have to use colons. You might be able to get away with dashes, but don't blame me if it doesn't work and you're using dashes. And description, let's type it Scott's PC. Now, of course, when we go ahead and refresh the page, this hasn't updated because I'm editing the file locally, right? So what we'd want to do is pipe the file over again with PSCP. So we can do that. But I recommend adding all the devices you want. Just keep doing that process. Grab the MAC address and description for all the devices you want and just go down the line, add them one by one. And then once you're done with that, we're going to go ahead and run this again. So make sure this is saved. We're going to copy over wakeland.php over again. So I'm going to run this command again. Except I'm going to name it index.php, and it's going to ask me if I want to overwrite, except it didn't, whatever. So now, if I go in here, Scott's PC is an option. If I type in the proper password, which is password, don't remember, it will send a magic packet to my MAC address. So yeah, of course if you type in the wrong password, it says incorrect password or whatever. So yeah, but of course my PC is already on, so it's not going to power it on when it's already on. But what you need to do next is you need to enable Wake on LAN in your actual computers that you want to be able to power on remotely. Because sure, the server will send a magic packet, it's called off to, my PC, but if my PC isn't set to accept that packet, it will just get dropped and not do anything. So I'll show you how to do that right now.
So right now I'll show you how to enter your computer's UEFI or BIOS settings to enable Wake on LAN. So with my PC, what you do is you hit F2. Usually it'll give you a little bit of a splash screen, like right about now, in a second. That tells you what button to hit. For mine it's F2. Sorry, my camera wasn't focusing there. But your PC might not give you any menu like that. It might not tell you what to press to enter the setup utilities. So you might have to hit the Windows key when you're in Windows and go to reboot. And it might give you an option to reboot with special settings. And the computer automatically restart into the setup utility. So basically, you just need to get into here however you're going to do it. Now, my setup utility is really peculiar. Dell's and other manufacturers are very straightforward, but this one's a little bit funky in that I think you have to go to like ACPI. Yours is going to look different than this, 99.9% chance. But the setting that I'm looking for is ring in power on. I don't know why they call it that, but that's what it is. It's almost always called just wake from LAN or wake on LAN or wake from NIC or whatever. So you go ahead, you just make sure that's set to enabled, whatever they call it, and you exit your setup after saving changes.
So once you've done that, your site should be completely functional. You should have all the choices you want in here and you should be able to power them on just by connecting to this website from a different device. But there are a few more things I'd like to mention. Another cool little thing is that if you're editing the file, and let's just screw up this code a little bit. Let's just remove that so that it won't run. The page won't load, right? It won't compile. You're like, okay, what the hell went wrong? It doesn't throw your message. Nothing's really happening. What you can do is you can troubleshoot by going over here and typing in PHP, index.php, and it'll tell you what the error is. Because basically what you're doing is you're running the file in the command line rather than through a web server. So that if I were to go back in and correct that issue, run it again, it spits out the HTML page that is compiled. The only difference between here and here is that I'm viewing this markup language through a web browser, whereas here I'm viewing it just through a terminal session. So that's just good to know to run stuff with PHP, the name of the file, to troubleshoot if it's not running properly for you. So now I should be able to do a test and show you how this all works.
So I'm on that page on my phone right now. I could also do this on my laptop or any other device with a web browser. My computer is completely off, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit the submit button. I've already made my selection and typed in my password, so I hit submit, and my PC power is on. So effectively what I'll probably use this for is not so much I'm too lazy to go to my desktop because my room isn't that big. I'll probably use it for VPNing into my network from campus because I'm a college student, and turning on my desktop remotely if I need to access, a VM or something particular that is on it. So hopefully this video was helpful to all of you. If you liked it, please do like, comment, subscribe, whatever. If you have any questions, concerns, criticisms, improvements, anything whatsoever, please feel free to comment, and I'll definitely get back to you if it's something that I should respond to. So overall, thank you all for watching. I hope to see you in my future videos.